Hello. Today what we're going to look at is shading. Now shading is all about attention to details. You got to relax your hand. You got to think of the pencil as a delicate instrument, especially when you're using a drawing pencil. Let's look at this tiny pencil. This pencil is a 6B, if you can see that. A 6B pencil can get super dark. Allow me to demonstrate in a minute when I demonstrate. You're going to find that it makes a nice rich velvet black. This particular brand of pencil maintains its sharpness, I guess you would say. It's less grainy, and it's an enjoyable experience. I tend to talk too much about things, but let me restate. When you're shading with a pencil, it's kind of weird looking at this camera. Let me imagine students. Okay. Guys, today what we're going to do is we're going to shade a gradation using the point of the pencil. Now, it's very important to pay attention to details, and when you begin, you must begin with a very sharp pencil. When your pencil's sharp, you're going to have a point that looks like this. Now, when it touches the paper, I'm going to draw a line at the tip, and that represents the paper, the surface of the paper. If you notice, it starts out pointy and sharp, and then once you start shading it, let me fill this in. You can hear the noise. I'm applying a lot of pressure, and I'm trying to make the point of the pencil black. So there's my point of the pencil. And what has happened to my point of my pencil, I don't know if you could see, let me put it closer, or maybe hold my hand to help it focus. But what's happened is that now what we have is this happening. Since I hold the pencil at an angle, it might look like this. Basically, the pencil point kind of sinks into the paper, but it doesn't really. What happens is the lead is wasted away, and so you end up with instead of a point of the pencil, you end up with something like this. This one here. All you have to do is when you're trying to make black, you just turn it so that contacts the paper. Okay, let's call this A, B, and C. A being the point of your pencil, B being the pencil once it wears down and it's still in contact with the paper, and C when you want to make dark strokes. You want B when you want smooth strokes, right? And if you want black, you need A or C. Remember, always when you start shading, you want A. Obviously, you hold it at an angle a little bit when it hits the paper. I hold it kind of at this angle like this when I'm shading, right? And what's important is when you're getting into making a smooth tonal gradation using only the point of your pencil, you've got to understand and be aware of the point of your pencil, because sometimes when you want to shade super light, you want to avoid taking the point of your pencil and hitting the paper with it, because it may make a line or a mark that you don't want, where otherwise what you want is light shading, and all of a sudden you have this black mark in the middle of your shading, and the only way to fix that would be to erase everything and start from scratch. And we all know that anytime you erase, it kind of damages the paper. You can think of paper as finely combed hair, where all the fibers of the paper are in nice, neat rows and columns. And what happens, it's kind of like messy hair. If you had long hair, you know, I have short hair, obviously, but it's like messy hair. And then when you go to shade, the paper's kind of chunky and you get the chunky shading. So what pencil am I using? I'm using the 6B pencil. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about shading, right? I'm going to make a gradation. What's important to understand is that when you're shading, right, you want to use short back and forth strokes when you begin shading on an edge, and then you can lengthen your strokes to cover a larger area once you have a nice clean edge. It's almost like you're wiggling back and forth. Most of the time when I'm shading, I'm either using straight back and forth strokes, or I'm using kind of circular or oval like strokes when I'm filling in light patches to make it look smooth. Unless you've been shading for a long time, you're not going to be able to make a gradation right away. So it's better to make different values, at least 2 or 3 different values when you're trying to make your gradation. And now that I'm done explaining, well, one last thing about shading is that, yes, there are dark and light pencils. The high number Bs are the darkest ones, and the high number Hs are the hardest. So 6B would be your soft pencil, 4B is not quite as soft, 2B is good for general purpose drawing, or B or HB. And then when you get to H, you got a hard pencil. Any number of H, the higher the number, the harder the pencil, and the lighter it becomes. So you can't make a gradation by doing halfway with a 6B and then picking up the next pencil and getting next to it. That doesn't work. Okay, so just watch the demonstration and then I'll just do a voiceover or something afterward. Or maybe I could just talk about it while I'm shading. So here's where I'm going to do the gradation. I'm just going to go ahead and hold the camera while I shade. I'm going to start off with the point of my pencil with short back and forth strokes. Notice how the short back and forth stroke, and then I'm going to begin to grow the strokes. I'm going to bring this all the way down, and then I'm going to make black, say, up to here, okay? So I'll make all this black, so I'll be right. Okay, so now I have black. You can't, it's kind of hard to, there's some glare, but there it is. It's black. And then I'm going to make a band next to it. That's not quite as dark. And then I'm going to make one more band that's lighter. All by relaxing my hand and barely shading lighter, right? And then I can get super light. Now, I'm not sure about the point of my pencil. It might be like C, and I want it like B instead of A or C. So what I'm going to do is shade a little bit in the dark, and then very lightly, barely touch, like a whisper, the pencil from the paper. Now, it's already starting to look like I'm attempting at a gradient, but there's contrast right here between the light and the dark. What I'm going to do is fill in the light next to the dark. If I cover over the dark again, you're always going to have that contrast. So what you want to do is fill in dark on top of the lighter area to make it look like it's fading. You can use little circles, little ovals, short back and forth strokes, whatever it takes. Takes practice. And notice how it's starting to disappear, right? That's the best way to learn to shade. It's not about doing it all perfect at once. It's about correcting over and over. It's kind of hard to see because of the glare. I'm sorry, but shading properly is about cleaning up the patches. And when you shade at first, it may be rough, but if you end up with a gradation, you should be proud of yourself because we're not all perfect. And shading is a process that needs to be practiced and learned. Now, what I can do is I can turn the point of my pencil and fill in little white dots that show up. Now we see based on contrast, which means difference between light and dark, and sometimes when you have an inadvertent black stroke, to fix it instead of erasing, sometimes you can get away with shading over the white areas all around it to make it less noticeable. And the more of this you do, the cleaner your shading is going to look, especially when you're trying to make a smooth tonal gradation only with the point of your pencil. Thank you and have a lovely day.